The 750 Ti is one of the most famous and well-loved GPUs, like, ever, but can it handle modern games in 2022? I don't know. I'm gonna find out, but you just need to be patient and stop rushing me. Sheesh. Oh hey, hi there, how you doing? I'm TechDweeb, thanks for clicking on the video today. The 750 Ti is one of my favorite GPUs of all time. Let me tell you why. There are things in life that come and go. Pogs, wearing your pants really low, Pokemon Go, flossing, fidget spinners. Some things just don't have staying power, so to speak. And PC hardware is the same. Every year or so, we get a whole bunch of new processors and motherboards and graphics cards, and usually it's just a matter of out with the old, in with the new. But every now and then, a product comes along that is so well optimized, so well received, something that performs so well compared to the price that future generations have a tough time surpassing it. Of course, I'm talking about the 750 Ti. This GPU was released way back in 2014 for the launch price of $150. At the time, it offered an amazing value. For just $150, you could play pretty much any modern game at the time. However, one of the best features of this GPU was the power draw. It required no 6-pin PCIe connector, and considering how well it performed, that was really surprising. The 750 Ti and the GTX 750 were actually the first in a new generation of GPUs. The rest of the 700 series were the Kepler GPUs, but the 750 and the 750 Ti were Maxwell cards, which means they could take advantage of the more modern feature set of the Maxwell architecture, like increased power efficiency and the newer upgraded NVENC encoding. Not only that, but semi-recently, NVIDIA has actually stopped supporting its older GPUs. Everything from Kepler and earlier no longer have access to the latest NVIDIA game-ready drivers. But the 750 Ti is in the unique position of being part of the 700 series while still getting driver updates. So believe it or not, this GPU is still going strong. It's still relevant despite its age. The 750 Ti has held up over the years as a solid, low-cost, entry-level GPU with surprising performance compared to the price. And it's been the start that many PC gamers needed to get in on PC gaming at the ground level. However, it's 2022. The driver progress alone can't help an old GPU hold its own in modern games. I've had nothing but love and respect for the 750 Ti, but let's be real here. An 8-year-old entry-level low-cost GPU can't possibly handle modern games. Can it? Well, yeah it can. Starting off our tests today, as always, with Shadow the Tomb Raider, and it's playing good. Now, we need to keep our expectations in check here. This GPU was $150 8 years ago. The goal today isn't to see amazingly mind-blowing, butt-melting performance. We just want to see if it can play games. Can it run the games at high enough settings that they look okay and play well enough? In Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we're actually off to a pretty strong start. Running at 1080p with a low preset, but with normal textures, at 75% resolution scale, which is 900p, essentially. And by the end of this run, we end up with a very playable 35 FPS. The game still looks really good at these settings too, in my opinion. This game has a very low preset where you can turn off the shadows and textures, but then it really doesn't look good. So it's actually pretty cool that we're able to run the game at playable frame rates on this GPU without making it look like garbage. It actually looks great, and it plays just fine. A really strong start, in my opinion. I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to an older game. GTA 5 was released in 2015, 1 year after this GPU was born, and it's had many updates over the years to improve the performance. I can't say how well the 750 Ti handled it back then, but now, today, in 2022, it's doing really good. I'm running at 1080p with a mix of normal and high settings, which are like the low and medium settings in this game, and I got an average of 104 FPS. Like, seriously, this game is super well optimized. It runs on almost anything, but it still looks really good, even on the low settings, and we're getting over 100 FPS. If you had a 60Hz display, you can bump up those settings to high or very high and still get really great performance. That's awesome. I'm really happy with how this is going so far.
Please! Can you please give me a ride? I can't do it! I can't marry him! Oh my god! No! I think that's him! Jesus, why are you shooting?
I want to try some other more modern games, so let's stick with only games that have come out in the last 3 or 4 years. Here's Battlefield 5, native 1080p with a low preset. I was not expecting it to do this well. I got 51 FPS by the end of my test run. That's more than playable. That's actually super enjoyable. And at native 1080p no less. If you wanted to increase the frame rate above 60 FPS, you could use the resolution scaling options. But when I'm testing an older, weaker GPU, I kind of expect to be able to achieve maybe like 40 FPS, give or take. So over 50 FPS is actually really solid considering the age and price of this GPU. And yeah, this is another one of those games that look really freaking good even at low settings. Actually, that's kind of like a thing with modern games. They still look amazing even on low settings. Back in the day, you know, it used to be that like low settings looked like garbage, and medium was kind of okay, and high was actually good, and ultra was like mind-blowingly amazing. Not really like that these days. Low settings still look pretty darn good, and ultra settings don't look that much better than low settings. I'm actually going to be making a video about that topic, so get subscribed if you haven't yet, so you don't miss it. Here's Kingdom Come Deliverance. Playing at 1080p with low settings, we got 34 FPS by the end of my test. The game looks amazing, even at low settings. This game, I remember when this game was coming out, they had a lot of hype about the graphics, saying it was so crazy realistic and demanding that it's going to be like the new Crysis. It was made on CryEngine 3, so yeah, that's actually kind of valid. I really thought I would love this game, but I actually didn't. I love open world RPGs, first-person RPGs, slow and thoughtful games where you take your time and immerse yourself in the world and the land and the lore. I also love games based on good, authentic medieval history. So it feels like this game should have been a perfect fit for me, but I played it for a few days and I just kind of didn't really like it that much for whatever reason. I figured I should give it another chance, which is why I have it installed on my PC right now. And since I had it installed, I figured, hey, why not throw it at the 750 Ti? And I was actually genuinely surprised at how well it ran and how enjoyable it was, especially considering this is native 1080p. I hope the game clicks with me at some point. You might see it again in my GPU testing videos if I decide to give it another chance and stick with it.
Damn it!
Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the best looking games, like ever. It really blows me away, even to this day, how freaking good this game looks. On the 750 Ti here, I'm running with pretty much the lowest settings, but with high textures. I actually had to manually adjust the texture resolution in the config file to get the textures up though. It's so annoying that Red Dead just doesn't let you just pick your own settings in the game. I'm also using a new feature of Red Dead 2. This game now has native FSR 2.0 support. So I'm using balanced FSR here, and the game looks pretty good. Pretty darn good, actually. I mean, it's a little bit blurry due to the FSR, but it's not too bad. I'm actually kind of impressed at how well FSR 2.0 compares to DLSS. This game is notorious for running poorly on 2GB GPUs, so the fact that we're running at a decent, consistent, playable frame rate on our 2GB 750 Ti shows that with a little bit of tinkering, this GPU can still play games that it technically shouldn't be able to play. And they look good, and they play well, at a good FPS, which is more than I can say for a lot of older GPUs. And this is why I've been so impressed by the 750 Ti, because it handles pretty much everything I throw at it. Except in some circumstances, of course. Assassin's Creed Valhalla just straight up doesn't run on this GPU. It maxes out at feature set 11.0, so Assassin's Creed Valhalla doesn't work. God of War, that's another new game that doesn't work. So some modern games just won't work. But those games are actually pretty few and far between, to be honest. The vast majority of even new games should at least launch on this GPU, especially considering that it has access to the latest game-ready drivers. For example, here's a brand new game. Just came out like a month or so ago. Man Remastered. I'm running at 1080p, low settings, but I enabled Performance FSR 2.0, and I'm getting a very playable 44 FPS average. It's a little stuttery, not the smoothest 44 FPS, but if you lock this at like 30 FPS, I think you'll find it felt much smoother. Lots of games play at 30 FPS on the consoles, and honestly, when you're sitting back on your couch playing with a controller, 30 FPS is enough. This game looks mighty fine too. Honestly, you're not sacrificing much playing at low settings. That Performance FSR, it adds some definite smudginess, but hey, at least you can play this brand new game and have a good time. I actually lost my save file for this game. I had to reinstall Windows, and then I started a new game without realizing it was overwrite my old cloud save, and now I gotta go back to the start. Whatever, I wasn't very far in the game, but yeah, it's still annoying. Here's another game I fired up, expecting it to not fare so well, and again, I was pleasantly surprised. Days Gone doesn't look great at the lowest settings when you have to turn off all the shadows and lighting, but I didn't have to go that low here. I'm running at 1080p with low-medium settings mix, but with 70% resolution scale, and I got an average of 46 by the end of my test. 1080p with 70% resolution scale is basically 900p. I made a video about render scales, by the way, if you want to know more about how that works. I think that's a good target for this GPU, on newer, more demanding games. 900p. That lets you bump up the graphics a little bit from the lowest settings in most situations, and it keeps it at a playable FPS. 45 FPS in Days Gone is more than I expected, considering I was able to keep it looking good. Another pleasant surprise. I shouldn't be surprised. The 750 Ti has surprised me enough that I should expect it to do well, and I'm sure at some point new games will be unplayable due to their demanding graphics. But for now at least, the 750 Ti is still going strong, believe it or not. Fortnite is a game that some people like to play, so let's test it out, why not? Here I'm running at 1080p with mostly low settings, medium shadows, and epic view distance, and I got an average of 55 FPS. I know the competitive people prefer to play with the lowest settings in performance mode, but that actually looks pretty ugly, in my opinion. I'd personally rather sacrifice some FPS to make it look a little better. This is how I like to play, and I'm fine with 55 FPS. The game looks good, and it feels good at these settings, so I'm happy. I was actually doing pretty okay for a bit until my lag made things all weird. Look at this. I was poning these sweats until my crappy internet started griefing me. Am I using those terms correctly? Okay. We need to throw a real challenge at this GPU. Let's put it through the gauntlet that is Cyberpunk 2077. This game definitely doesn't condone 2GB GPUs. I was running at 1080p with the lowest settings and balanced FSR, and I got just 29 FPS on average. To be fair, the game was actually playable. If you really wanted to play this game and you have a 750 Ti, you could play this, and it wouldn't be the worst experience in the world. Heck, it played at like 25 FPS on the Xbox One, and it sold like 4 million copies for that console, so obviously lots of people are fine with sub 30 FPS in a game like this. Just go into this with tempered expectations. If you expect the game to run great and look great, you'll be disappointed. But if you expect it to look not so great and barely run, then you'll be pleasantly surprised to find out that it's actually okay. Not great, but okay. And finally, I wanted to end on a high note. Far Cry 6 ran pretty good as well, even though it's a very new game. I had to run at 1080p with Performance FSR at the lowest settings, but I squeezed out 40 FPS on average, and the game played pretty good. Obviously, performance FSR isn't the best way to experience this game, but I bet you could go down to balanced and keep it above 30 FPS. Oh, and I'm sorry the footage is so dark. I couldn't get footage of the game during the day. As far as I could tell, there's no way to wait until daytime in the game, so this night footage was the best I could do for you. But subjectively, as I was playing this, I didn't hate it. I was playing the game and enjoying it, even though the graphics were turned down, and I think if I had nothing but a 750 Ti, I'd still be totally fine to play through this entire game, and I'd enjoy the experience, which is saying something. I'm sure at some point the 750 Ti will be genuinely obsolete and not worth considering, but that time is not now. It's still here, hanging in there, playing modern games at respectable settings and resolutions. Technology like FSR upscaling has been a big help at getting these games running good and looking good on even older hardware like the 750 Ti. This GPU is a 2GB GPU, and I keep hearing online that, oh, 4GB isn't enough for modern games. I would never buy a GPU that was less than 6GB, or 8GB, or 12GB. Well, I just played Far Cry 6, Spider-Man Remastered, Red Dead 2, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Fortnite, Battlefield 5, all at playable and enjoyable settings and frame rates on an old 2GB GPU. We gotta be real here. The 750 Ti isn't a high-end card that's going to handle Cyberpunk at max settings. But if you just want something to play games, 2GB is enough. Just barely, but it is enough. It really is. This GPU is not obsolete garbage, guys, which makes me happy because this GPU has stuck around way longer than it has any right to. It's one of my favorite GPUs ever, and I'm gonna be sad to see it go. And I'm sure at some point, probably sooner rather than later, this GPU will indeed not even be worth considering. But thankfully, we're not there yet. And that brings us to the end. Let's hear some love for the 750 Ti in the comments below. Have any of you guys been lucky enough to have one of these at any point? Do you still have one? Is there anything else you'd like to see running on this GPU? I'm thinking of doing an emulation video, testing out some high-end emulation stuff on it. Is that something you'd like to see? Let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, click the thumbs up button if you like the video, or the thumbs down if you didn't. I'd like to give a big thanks to my patrons who helped me out. There's a link to my Patreon page below if you want to support the channel. What else? Subscribe, obviously, if you haven't done that for some reason. What are you waiting for? I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
What's it to be?